All right, so today we are turning our focus on Uhuru's speech in Sagana and the way he went hammer and tongs on the church in regard to aiding and abetting corruption when they receive stolen money, as he says. And we are holding court with Dr. Nelson Makanda, who is the Secretary General of Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. Also with us, we have with us John Ngang as well, who is the chair of ELNET, that is Ethical Leadership Network of Kenya. Also we have with us Bishop John Warari, who is the executive board member of the Interreligious Council of Kenya, and also Dr. Edward Nzinga, who is also a board member of the National Council of Churches of Kenya. Let's continue with this conversation because I want you to be very frank and fair. And I'll come to you now, John, to ask you this very poignant question. The church has been giving preferential treatment to the politician. Isn't that true? Unfortunately, and what will have been the wisest fashion to treat these politicians? Because we see them when it is, electioneering time is when they'll come out in force, many of them, every church, putting out posters that I'll be attending, a certain church, so and so, will be preaching. Why the preferential treatment?
Again, I'll say three things. The first one is that any generalization is always wrong by definition. If you say your wife cooks bad food, and one day she cooks good food, it means your statement is wrong. Simply, you can take it to the bank. Anytime you generalize, there will be a problem with it, because there will be an exception to it. So, let's be clear. There may be some churches that have given certain candidates preferential treatment. But the moment we say the church, we mean, like Dr. Makara is saying, we mean everybody. Surely, that can't be true. For example, if you went through the newspaper to count how many churches the presidential candidates have attended, like if you go to Kiambu, let's say there are about 1,000 churches in Kiambu, how many of them have been visited by a leader? It's unlikely to be even 10%. So how could you include in the statement the other 90% if 10% have been visited by politicians and the other one? So my first point is, it can't be true. There's no data to show anything like that every church is giving some politician or every politician preferential treatment. Number two, we need to find out when a politician advertises he is going to a church, did he actually get permission from the pastor to advertise? Or did he actually mention, I'll be doing campaigns around your area, is it okay I come to your church? For a pastor to say no, and that's what Dr. Makara was saying,
yes,
they would have no biblical basis. To tell someone not to come to your church, the church is a public place. We say the church is a members club that belongs to everybody. So you can never call yourself a church and tell certain people not to come.
Yes.
So that's the second point that one needs to understand, that you cannot assume that when somebody comes to the church and advertises about it, that the pastor necessarily give permission. He may not even have preferred it, but you can't tell somebody not to come to the church. My third point, which is important, is pastors, I agree with you, must be very careful. It is wrong for a pastor to be politically partisan. Unfortunately for me, I'm not a pastor, so I can't practice this, but allow me to talk to pastors.
Yes.
Now, that you cannot call yourself a pastor and be partisan. Why? The moment the election results are announced, one half of your church will be rejoicing. The other half will be crying. And those people put so much emotional energy into something that the results bring depression. It is the work of pastors to talk to the depressed and try to encourage them. Now, if I knew that the pastor was supporting ODM and it has won, and I'm from PNU and I'm crying, surely I'm pastorless. I keep telling pastors, the moment you become partisan, please resign your job. Why? Even if you claim to be a pastor, you can't be pastor to everyone. So we need to be very careful. Pastors need to be very careful that they do not become partisan. That if you allow ODM, you must also allow whatever the other one, UDA, so that clearly your congregation knows the pastor doesn't support either side. But to stop them from coming, that's not on. It's unbiblical, it is wrong. We must allow everybody to come to church. We must allow them to participate. But one more thing, you can't allow a politician to come in front of the church and address the congregation. Because your congregation came to be spiritually nourished. The politician is coming for a different purpose. Why would you allow him around your pulpit?
Yeah, well, that will be a good question that we can pose to Dr. Warari as well. Why would you allow them on the pulpit?
It's very interesting because some years back, about 2 years back, we held a presser at one of the archbishops was there, and I was there. Actually, we were two. And the question was, should we allow the politicians, when they come to church and they give donations, should we allow all the fanfare? And the answer was from the Bible. The Bible says, what your right hand would do while you are giving, let not the left hand know. And so, and we said we don't want this fanfare. And again, I think 3 or so years back, we held an anti-corruption conference with KEPSA in Bomas of Kenya. In these 2 instances, and especially Serena, when we said we do not want fanfare, that the politicians are welcome, because actually our duty as the clergy, we shepherd both the good and the bad. But the word was there should not be fanfare. After that, somebody came to my office, and he was very categorical, and he was telling me that I should keep off the talk about corruption, and that he was saying blah blah. And he told me this. He insisted that I should repeat whether I've heard what he said or not. And then I told him, listen, you have told me so, but I would also want to tell you I am a clergy, and God has called me. I was not elected. God has called me, and I'm going to stand and shout that corruption is bad. So it was not easy for me, and it's not even so right now, but the word is that the clergy should remain apolitical. The other day we were with CMD, that is Center of Multi-Party Democracy in Naivasha, and I was among those who gave opening remarks, and there was one participant who asked me, what party do I belong to? And the person, when I looked at that person, there was sincerity, and I had to answer, and I said, I don't belong to any, and if ever I would belong to one or the other, I will not make it public. That is my own decision. And then I said, my party is called referee, because a referee would want to make sure that whatever game is being played, rules are followed, and that there is transparency, and there is a balance in the game. So indeed, the clergy, we are now held in a tight corner, because really the politicians set the agenda. In fact, even this discussion we are having it because a politician or politicians said something. We should not be always caught up with the wave. We should have our grounds, and indeed I would want to say this, that as leaders we must be careful how we respond. And it said it doesn't matter what is done to you, but what matters most is how you respond to it. So about the politicians being given special treatment when they come to church, they should not be given. Of course, protocol calls for us to recognize their office, and if they come to my congregation, I would say that we recognize the presence of Honorable so-and-so, but that is all. And then thereafter, like it has been said, the sheep or the congregants, they come to be spiritually fed. And so we should not divide our time that is very scarce with the politicians, because again, they come with preconceived agenda, and even if they say they want to greet the people, by the end of the day, they will chip in some politics and divide the flock. So I think we have to clean the altar, the pulpit, and we have to do it in a very strict way. Mm-hmm. And let it be that the pulpit is the place where the man of God delivers, man or woman of God delivers the message to the hungry souls. In fact, every other religious day, may it be Saturday, Friday, Sunday, when people flock into your congregation or into your church, please, the fact is they are hungry, they are tired, they are sick, they need an answer. And if you will not give that answer, or if, for example, you will allow other people to take to the pulpit and bring in their interest, then you have lost it. So, indeed, the church somehow, they've been guilty of not drawing the line and knowing that indeed the altar is holy. But again, how do we treat these politicians? They are our brothers and sisters. We should walk with them. And it's like when God loves the world, he loves the wicked, he loves the good. He includes all. The rain and the sunshine comes upon all. But of course, we must ourselves set an example and let the politicians know that the pulpit is a holy ground. After the messenger or the priest has delivered the sermon, then thereafter, without allowing them to climb to the pulpit, let them talk outside and greet their people, because indeed, again, then let me say this also. The congregation also puts the pastor in tight corner, because whenever they see a politician, although they are in the church, they would want to hear their politicians greet them, the politician greet them, and then thereafter they cheer them up and all that. They should be taught, they should be told that we go
Thank you.
For nourishment and not for politics.
So,
thank you.
So, Dr. Zenga, you agree with the fact or with the view that, yes, the church has really dropped the ball on that particular front?
Thank you, Dibar and listeners. If you allow me, I'll just backtrack a bit and maybe answer a question you asked before, whether the president was on right or wrong in dragging the church. And when I listened to His Excellency the President, he was bitter. For those of us who have done leadership, it's never good practice for a leader to show their anger openly at whatever level. And I remember, because part of the reason, we don't want to assume we don't know whom he was talking about. But the same man whom he was talking about is a man who has grown in the church. And one thing I credit him for, and allow me to say this because you asked us to be honest, at a time when the church was saying no to the constitution because of things that we thought we are not Christian, and for me, I stood for that, he alone stood with the church. And if this man would have started going to church recently, when he began to look for politics, for me, I would have a question mark. But if you have been all along in this church, and even these donations and wherever, for me, if you go to church and you give donations, we have many rich Kenyans, people who have wealth, but they don't also go to the church. And for the church, as my colleagues have said, the meaning of the church is called out ones, those who have been called out. By who? By God. So the moment you now turn your anger on the church, I think those are very dangerous grounds, that is for me, because one time in the life of King David, before he became king, he found Saul. Saul was just asleep. And David said, I could not raise my hand upon the Lord's anointed. So for me, even as a part of the church, I have a very great respect for anything called church, because it's an affront against God, and God is our life. And the people have taken that direction. So I would urge politicians, please do not, whatever your jokes are, whatever you want to do, please leave the church out of this, because those are very dangerous grounds that can even bring the mighty down. That said, about politicians being given preferential treatment, Dibar and the Kenyans, I think we need to understand that the church is both an organization and an organism. And being an organization, we are part of a culture. Today, any Mweshimiwa walking even to your home, even wherever, even if we are the Mweshimiwa here at Dibar, the way you would also address them would be different, because we are Africans, we respect people. What we agreed, because NCCK, headed by Archbishop Dr. Timothy Ndambuki, and who is the chair, and our General Secretary, Reverend Canon Chris Kinyanchui, we agreed this, that as NCCK family that has over 16 million members, 34 full registered churches, and 12 associate and 5 fraternal members, we agreed that we shall never allow politicians in the pulpit. And that one, we've taken it seriously. And we said, if a politician comes, if they want to speak, let them speak to members outside the church. Now, Dibar, as my colleague Bishop Warari has said, there might be people, and even I heard John mention that, there might be people who have overstepped that, maybe for personal reasons. But except we have 2 serious organizations in Kenya, and Kenyans should know this, NCCK and the EAK. Now, if a person is driving their own church, and they are doing whatever they want, they don't want to get into NCCK because they don't want discipline. They don't want to become the EAK because they don't want discipline. Because those 2 bodies actually regulate us. They help us become better. And if someone is driving their own vehicle out there, I think, Dibar, for me, there are many worse things that the church has been associated with, this one included. But if there are people of that nature, then for me, they are not part of the church as we know it in Kenya, because maybe they are driving their agenda. But by and by, whoever they are, I would still urge politicians, fight your battles, abuse each other, but please leave the church of God alone, because we can even keep quiet, but God is there. He shall pursue it. So for me, I would not urge any politician to actually talk about the church. Leave it there. Go there and pray. And even you talk about the church, and you are also part of the church, are you telling us you are also abetting crime? And if anything, Dr. Makanda mentioned this, how do we know where you have got your money? And if the government flags the money and tell us, when you see so and so carrying money, know that it is stolen cash, and we receive it, then you can now order us to account and tell us, this one was flagged, how comes you received it? But there's nothing of that nature. So for me, politicians, keep the church out of politics.
But if you may just remember also, when you look the entry also at the customs, we've just seen that there was almost 248 million shillings could not really be accounted for by a Kenyan who had gone to, abroad, come with a wad of cash in his bag, 248. When he's asked by the custom officers, can you account for this particular wad of cash in your bag? He was at pains to explain, right? And in a country where we are trying to, starch the flow of illicit money and money laundering, don't you think also the government is on the right step to question where this money is coming from, right? Because we know your sources as well. We know your your paycheck at the end of the day, how then do you come and have this tiny sum of money every other weekend that is being given to the church, right? You may remember also Professor Githu Muigai, the former Attorney General. He had also broached the issue of regulating the church so that at least we can account even when we have these finances, because we've seen so many corn churches popping up around the country, and Kenyans who are very gullible, they've been taken advantage of at the end of the day, yet the church has not really come out clearly to say anything. Rwanda has gone full steam ahead to regulate their churches, as it were. Don't you think it's not really to violate, and he was very categorical, it's not really to violate the freedom of worship at the end of the day, but it's just to bring sobriety where there is chaos. Maybe Dr. Makame can actually handle that as well. So I know we are broaching a very particular issues of,
This is a space we can engage. One is that only the government knows which account is receiving money that is proceeds of crime. The church has no capacity to determine which gift or which giver is trading or giving money that is proceeds of crime. So the government should take responsibility in that area. They cannot push that ball to the church to determine that the bulk's money is proceeds of crime. I have no capacity to determine. We are served, all of us equally, by the central bank, who is the regulator, and treasury, and KRA. So those institutions should take responsibility. They should come to my church or to whichever church and say, you banked 3 million shillings, 2 million shillings was given by Dibal, and that 2 million shillings we suspect is proceeds of crime. The church will return that money. There is no church in this country that will say no, the church will return that money, as it were. And if you like to call the church to be a witness, they will come and say, yes, we received gifts of 3 million shillings. Some people gave, we in the basket, we don't know who gave, but part of that money, you have said, the church will return that money. So the church will not be made to look like is cleaning up proceeds of crime. The church is not cleaning up any proceeds of crime because we are innocent. We are actually being victimized. The church is being victimized for a crime they have not committed. All that has happened is that people have come to church and they have given their money to God. What the Bible says is that you give and you let your left hand know that you gave, you have received your reward. It does not say the church should decline the gift, but the giver misses out on the point of giving. The point of giving is to honor God and to glorify God so that God who sees in secret will bless you.
But if he misses out on that, isn't not within your remit to correct? And tell them, yes, because they're in charge, they're supposed to be, you are supposed to be all the wiser in terms of advising that, yes, you don't stand on the podium and say, oh, I'm giving a gift of 2 million shillings here, or clap for me at the end of the day, oh, we celebrate. But you've been also celebrating the whole occasion of receiving 2 million, 3 million shillings, 5 million shillings. Huh?
Dibal, maybe to emphasize what he said. First of all, your question is simple. What's the role of church in fighting corruption money?
Yes.
I'm summarizing what you are saying.
Yes.
He is saying the church, number one, must fight, and several of us have repeated the same thing. It is the responsibility of the church to teach people the importance of genuinely earning money. They must also teach people what is wrong with corruption. They must, number three, teach people that they do not want their money if their money is stolen money. By the way, it's also in the Bible. In the old temple, they were told they should not receive money from prostitution. So similarly, a pastor who accepts any money he knows is from crime, he himself, now not leave alone the giver, the pastor himself will be in trouble. However, Dr. Makada is repeatedly telling you, you cannot listen to a guy calling, these are two politicians, one is calling the other one a thief. That one calling the other one a thief is also rich, equally rich like this other one. What level of, what pastor would know whether the guy calling himself a thief, calling the other one a thief, is not a thief, himself. So you'd be a fool to call somebody a thief because other politicians called him a fool. And that's what the church must avoid. The Bible tells us everything must be established in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. That means if the Bible says Nganga is a thief, and remember I'm the chairman of the Ethical Leadership Network, I would not call you unethical because somebody said you are unethical. I must find a way of verifying because the Bible requires me to require evidence. So when you say somebody is a thief, bring evidence. If you call somebody a thief who has never appeared in court having stolen, but you are saying he is, I would be a very strange guy to accept your propaganda and not ask you for evidence. I will not refuse. The guy may actually be a thief. The next thing I must ask you is, give me the evidence. If you happen to be somebody who is senior enough, and that's what Dr. Magara keeps repeating, to actually have the system, and you say somebody is a thief, it makes us suspect that you have no evidence. Because if you had, you will not be repeating like me, oh, that a guy is a thief. You have other ways. So it makes you untrustworthy or not be trusted to keep calling somebody else a thief when you have ability to give evidence.
Thank you.
And you don't.
Right.
And the church will be the wrong and biblical church to accept propaganda, and the church sings behind one politician fighting another. We keep repeating, let the church remain the church, able to accommodate all political persuasions so that all of them feel welcome in church.
All right.
The code of conduct.
Just a moment. Can I also give an opportunity to Dr. John there to respond to this as well at the end of the day, because we can see, has the president also opened another Pandora's box? Because he himself, as is mentioned, we know he promised Kenyans while he was out of the country, and we had the Pandora Papers as well, that a lot of wealth is stashed away in abroad, and people were questioning all this wealth that is stashed abroad. Can it also be in the country to keep the cash flowing so that the economy can be boosted at the end of the day? Why would we salt it at the end of the day abroad while we are in dire need of finances here? Look at the debt that we're being saddled with right now, and we're grappling as a country. So do you think he acted in the wisest of fashion to actually broach that particular subject while he himself has not been really coming to the fore to be very clear about his wealth abroad?
I think it's very important for us to know again that we must exercise self-control. There are some things you can utter when you're emotionally charged, and after you have cooled down, you wonder, really, why did I make such statement? So I would say that the church would urge the government to strengthen the institutions that are mandated to look into all the illicit kind of businesses. And I'm happy that the over 200 million was intercepted at the airport. I'm happy because that shows that the government is doing its work. And so the thing is, the government should continue strengthening its institutions, but as it were, it should trend carefully, because what we saw and heard was a blanket condemnation. I wish there were specifics, because like I said some time back, that we have rogue lawyers, we have quacks, rogue doctors, etc. We cannot say all doctors in Kenya are bad. We cannot say all media houses, like your very esteemed media house here, the Standard Group. We cannot say that you are in that category where you give misinformations and all that. So there lacked specifics. Then again, the blanket condemnation actually causes even those people who are walking uprightly to suffer. So if there is a particular, and I think my other speakers, they have put it very well and clear, that there should have been specifics. If in particular church there was this donation from this proceeds that is not legal, and the government has the machinery, why don't they follow it up? Then again, about the regulation of churches. I think that some 3 or so years ago, we drafted a self-regulation, church regulation amendment bill, and it went up to Parliament. I don't know where it is right now. And when we talk of umbrella bodies like EK, NCCK, these are bodies that are capable of disciplining their members and even capacity building the members so that they can be walking in the light. So I feel strongly that the church has been turned into a boxing bag, punching bag, and it is unfortunate. If you want to speak to the church, come clear, and because the church is very, very important. We have had, like my previous speakers, they have already outlined, the church has produced universities, church has produced schools and hospitals, and of course it has cultured, it has nurtured a very, very important part of the society. So we cannot just wake up and condemn the church. So I feel like Article 131 of our Constitution, Section E, says that the presidency is a symbol of unity. And so it would be bad, and I would request really humbly that the presidency should unite us as one, whether we are having elections coming or not, that we should not be divided, because we are one, we don't have another nation. We'd want the church itself. Let me say at this juncture, our mandate is that of moral obligation. We want open, fair, transparent elections. And we will do everything possible. We are praying, and we will be on the ground to observe. We do not have, we are not politicians per se, but we have our part to play. So if everyone plays his or her part in the right way, I feel debarred. By the end of August, we will have a peaceful election, and we will have a good nation. And let me say this as a prophet, because I am. I have been a student of prophecy for many years, and I feel deep down within me, I should speak the word of prophecy to this nation. Isaiah 3:10 has repeatedly been given to me by God, that I should tell this nation, it shall be well. It shall be well. During the election, and those who are bent to causing trouble, the Almighty God, the God that the Church of Jesus Christ believes in, that person is going to be removed so that there will be no bloodshed, there will be no chaos in this nation. So let us tone down. The politicians, please, when you are angry, when you are hungry, when you are tired, don't make public pronunciations. Please, first of all, calm down, because the damage will be too much. So, and again, for us, whatever is said or done, let us sleep over the matter. Let us be careful not to answer immediately, because again, we are going to lose it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nzinga. You hear Bishop Warari mentioning also the self-regulating bill that is in Parliament as well, but this was steamrolled by the National Pentecostal Congress, as it were, Pentecostal Churches Congress, and it was seeking to rein in the evangelicals by the Secretary General Stephen Lichu. Was this a holistic bill that had the participation of EAK, of also the NCCK, of IRCK at the end of the day? Or it was particularly to try and bring sobriety on the evangelicals?
Dibar, for purposes of record, let me mention this, that about 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, about a year ago, the the Senate Committee on National Integration and Cohesion summoned the NCCK through the chair, Most Reverend Dr. Timothy Dambuki, who also happens to be my Archbishop. And at that time, I was delegated by His Grace, the Archbishop, to represent him in that meeting. And what the Senate Committee wanted was whether NCCK could actually come up with an initiative which Senate would take which the committee would take to Senate, so that they regulate the operations of the churches. And what is happening is that is still in the pipeline, and the General Secretary of the NCCK has also taken up that, and sooner or later Kenyans will have such a regulator. And the reason we are saying this is there's something Bishop Dr. Warari mentioned about all setups. We have media and the gutter press. We have mainstream media and the gutter press. Also in the church, we have the mainstream. We have NCCK, EAK, KCCB, and SDA. At least to the best of my knowledge, those are the 4 major formations of churches in Kenya. And these ones have structures. Then there's another group. Kenya has over 4,000 registered churches. But then, ask EAK their membership and ask NCCK their membership, and the KCCB as a standalone and SDA, there will not even be 1,000. So it means over 3,000, almost over 3,000, over 3,500 churches are out there doing their thing, and having bishops who have one congregation and 20 members, and they have no ethics, have not been in Bible school, they don't know what they preach, and I think the bar, that is where the problem is. So this bill is long overdue, and I wish the government that is faulting the church could now fast track that bill, so that next day they call us, they say NCCK, EAK, KCCB, SDA, tell us what is happening, because we don't know what is happening. But at present, the bar, there is very little, because as NCCK we can't even tell those, the 3,500 or so members, people out there doing their thing, and those are the people who maybe, I don't know, I think maybe they are the people the president was talking about, for me, because I've not heard any serious church, for that matter, whereby anything like that was reported. And the Archbishop of the ABC, who's the chair of the NCCK, has made it categorically that you don't even come to the church to do your things. And even like right now, when we have those Arambes, we use church people. Then if the politician walks in, they are given an opportunity just to speak out there, because that is the official stand. The Catholic head has also said politicians are not allowed in churches. The SCK Archbishop has also mentioned that. So at least the mainstream churches have made it clear. Thank you.
I hope, Dr. Makanda, you've not lost your track of thought. I interrupted you.
I could pick up. Allow me to say perhaps 3 things. One is to say that let me pick what my son asked me. And I haven't found a response to it. My son once asked me, when Jesus was hosted by Zacchaeus and entertained by Zacchaeus, which money was he using to host the party? And this scripture, that time my son was about 10 years, 11 years. Which money did Zacchaeus use to host Jesus and to feed him? And that question has left me thinking. I'm in the process of trying to organize a consultation of academicians to help me
to come with a thesis on this, actually.
Deal with this challenge. How should the church handle money and proceeds of people who come to church who are sinners, if it were, when they came to church and they gave? How do we deal with that process? As it is now, I have no direct advice that I can give and say, this is what the Bible says that you should do. So I stand at that point. Number two is to proceed and say that the issues of hosting politicians on the pulpit in church, it's obviously wrong, and we have spoken to that. We have held meetings within the EAK and communicated as such to all our members to withhold allowing politicians on the pulpit to engage in partisan campaigns. What remains is to see compliance from members, and if institutions, because churches are institutions that are registered in this country independently, if they do not follow that, EAK or NCCK cannot hold them back and say, you are a wrong church. It's just that that leader is failing in their corporate responsibility. Number three is to say that the issue of regulation of churches is an area that the government does not want to engage. And it's not right that the government thinks...
What do you mean it doesn't want to engage?
I'm perhaps saying that the government should not go into that area, because worship in this country and in your constitution is a right, and it cannot be taken away.
But even
if
the
you
government
seek to regulate churches...
Yeah, I'm just asking. The government was very categorical that we are not infringing on your freedom of worship. If you look at the monarchy, who is the head of a church? In, you know, when you go back, who is the head of a church in the monarchy there? No, just answer me. Who is the head of a church?
Where?
In England.
In England. The Queen.
The Queen.
The
Isn't
Queen.
it? Yes.
The Queen, yes.
But has the liberty of the churches...
Of the
Anglican Church.
That's why I asked where.
That's
why I asked where.
Anglican, yes.
And it's in England.
And in England.
It's in England. It's not even in Kenya. It's not even in Kenya.
Yes.
Yes.
But so you okay? I lost your track of thought. Sorry, I interrupted you. I just wanted to because the government was categorical that we're not infringing on your rights to worship. We just want sobriety, and this is where we had regulations now, self-regulations being mooted by the church, steamrolled by Stephen Dichu. What I've mentioned, the council, the National Pentecostal
Congress. Yes, I know what you're
with this
talking
particular
about.
bill.
I know what you're talking about. What I'm saying is that the Constitution gives freedom of belief and worship in this country. And that freedom is actually absolute. It cannot be taken away by anybody. If you are seeking to regulate the church in a manner to curtail how they worship, how will you curtail those who pray on Mount Kenya? Those who pray in Boni Forest? How would you deal with it? I mean, it's beginning to peak here and there. You have to actually go back to this constitution and change it if you are seeking to stop anybody in a manner that they worship. Unless if they are harming people's lives, then it is wrong. That the government, the penal code already has provided for. The Societies Act as is, if it is implemented as is, there is no church in this country that can remain wrong. If somebody does something that is wrong, if a preacher is conning people, the penal code has provisions for it. If this man is doing things that are harming life, the penal code, can be able to deal with it. So for me, it is the failure of government to be able to implement. If it's about tax returns, the law is already clear. So there isn't any need for an extra law, and this is what we told Githum Muigai. We met Githum Muigai severally, and we told him, implement the law that is there. Because at that time, there was this preacher called Kanyari who was doing this and this and this and that. We said, you have the liberty to implement Societies Act and the Penal Code as is. But be as it may, EAK has about 900 denominations that are our members and organizations. We have a code of conduct. If you come into our family, we ask you to sign into a code of conduct that allows us to be able to come to you and ask you, you signed to this code of conduct, how come you are behaving outside that code of conduct? But we also ensure that when you become our member, we read your constitution to ensure that your constitution is sound, that it provides mechanism of internal regulation and discipline. So that then if there are weaknesses within your document of your constitution of governance, then we help you improve it so that then you are sound. But then thirdly, the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, the KCCB, the NCCK, and even the Congress, through Hesabika, have come up with a code of conduct that we are working on. It's at its tail end. We will very soon launch it as a common document for all of us for self-regulation.
Fantastic.
Not for government regulation. I think the issue that we will not allow is this issue of allowing government latitude to encroach on the freedom of worship, because one person who should be dealt with through the Penal Code and the Societies Act, the government has failed to do it, and now they want to use it to come and encroach on us.
What is the rhyme and reason of having another self-regulating document that you're coming up with, and there is another one in Parliament? What's the difference?
Because EAK does not believe that that's the space that government should go into. Because this thing came up.
But what I failed to understand is the fact that you say that this was a self-regulating bill that has been pushed by the church itself.
No, so, I haven't said it's Kanonzinga who said that.
It's Kanonzinga who said that.
Yes. Kanonzinga who said that.
But I thought all of you are speaking from
No.
You see, that is where we have a problem at the end of the day, because we'll have all these voices from NCCK, from the National Pentecostal Congress. We'll have EAK having another voice, and you will see even the reactions as well. Where is that one collective voice that is coming from the church, so that we know this is a stand of a church, so that this bill you're coming up with is not countering the bill that is still in the house from
Let me respond,
Pentecostal Congress?
Let me respond. Jesus said, let the tares and the wheat grow. That is the principle that we have. Let the tares and the wheat grow together. Because when you begin to introduce government regulation of worship, and this thing was brought up by Githu because of radicalization. At that time, what Githu was targeting was mosques that were radicalizing young people. And so he was trying to produce generalized regulations so that he can target mosques. But then in doing that, the ball came to the church. The idea of government at that time was to say, this masjid here, and this masjid here, this masjid here is radicalizing youth and recruiting them into terrorism. So let's produce regulations that say every church, wherever it stands, every congregation will bring its own returns, every preacher will register, will go and get certificate of good conduct, blah, 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 blah. It was an idea that was meant to regulate radicalization in mosques, but then it ended up in the hands, and now what we were talking about was the church.
Right, thank you.
And for me, once you allow government that space, once we allow government the space to encroach on the freedom of worship for whatever it is, you are stepping on the wrong ground.
Thank you.
If there are issues, use the penal code, use the law that is existing.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Well, let me just come to, I don't know if it's actually Bishop Warari or Nzinga who made that particular statement of culture and the church. And when we're talking about preferential treatment, yes, it's in our culture to recognize, some of these leaders. We should give them a higher pedestal in the church. Isn't that also a violation of, what the Bible really says in the book of James at the end of the day? Was it Nzinga or Warari? Either of you?
It was Nzinga. It's me who said that. And Dibara allow me, because this is on national television, to just maybe...
But what does James, you are privy to the Bible intimately?
Yes.
What does James,
let me say this.
What does James 2, chapter 2, from verse 1 talk about?
Of course, it talks about equal treatment for all people, but the same Bible talks of giving honor to whose honor is due. The same Bible. Yes.
No.
Giving honor.
Just a moment, because if giving honor to whom is due,
yes.
Aren't you now using that particular text as a pretext, out of context? Because one, we know when Jesus was speaking about honor, right? It was in light of what?
Yes.
It was in light of what?
I'm
asking a simple question. It was in light of what?
The time Jesus was speaking about honor, giving honor,
yes,
when it's due, Dibar, from a Christian perspective.
No, Zinga, I'm asking a very pointed question.
Yes.
When Jesus was speaking about that particular verse, what was the context?
Of giving honor to whom honor is due.
Yes.
Of course, he talked about giving Caesar what belongs to Caesar and
Fantastic,
giving to God what
fantastic.
belongs to God.
And when you come to James, it's very categorical.
Yes.
So you cannot say giving honor to that actually is using that particular text as a pretext out of context.
Okay, Dibar, let me say this. It's me who talked about culture. And the culture is embedded in us. And I said this honestly. Those people that are considered in the society a little higher, and we used to see this when a parent gets in the bus and you are seated, you just stand up. Not because the parent is a different human being, but because it is your parent. So for me, the issue about culture is still in the church. And it is in the church for obvious reasons. Where I fellowship in the Africa Brotherhood Church, the three people who are leading the service, when they get in, we stand up as an honor to God because they are actually representing God at that time. When the politician comes, he is not representing God, but he represents the authority of the people, and we are part of the society. I'm not saying preferential treatment in terms of anything, because I think preferential treatment would be like they come there, we tell them preach this and that. But whatever we do for politicians is what we do to the other members of the society, businessmen and other people, and even ordinary members who want to serve the church. As someone in our midst said, the church is an open society. It's an open congregation. That's why the church doors are always open. So for me, in my understanding, I think the issue about culture is still playing in the church.
Thank you.
And there's no day when we will not fail to honor the people that are ahead of us.
Thank you. All right, we want to bring this to a close. Thank you very much. I just give each of you, closing remarks. Let's just begin with you, Warari, as well. Your closing remarks on that at the end of the day.
Thank you, Dibal, and thank you for inviting me here. At this very critical moment, I would like to urge all Kenyans to exercise sobriety. It's very tempting, for example, during this campaigning period, during this kind of period, that we can be over-excited. We should know that this nation of Kenya will continue even when we are long gone.
Thank you.
And so what I would urge us, the politicians and all, let us kindly see to it that we will deliver free, open and fair elections. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from also John Nganga, briefly, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Be ethical. Whether you're a politician, ethics do not become foreign. The Bible requires all of us to do it. The country requires all of us to do it. As a politician, don't besmirk the other one without knowing that is unethical.
Thank you.
Number two, and I finish with this, that the church must remain non-partisan and must welcome people from either side and not agree to be drawn in that direction.
Thank you. Dr. Makanda.
The church is an institution of good, and we like to urge politicians to allow us to do our work because we exist for the citizens. We want to serve this country. Then number two is to say we desire a peaceful and credible elections.
Thank you.
Whatever that can be done to give this country a peaceful election, a credible election, let's not spare any effort. Then finally is to urge the government and here particularly the security agencies not to be partisan in these elections.
Thank you.
They must be vigilant to ensure that we maintain law and order.
Thank you.
And not to take any side.
Dr. Zinga, briefly, 30 seconds. Your closing remarks.
Get vaccinated, keep peace during the electioneering period. Politicians do not provoke each other, and let's live for this country. God bless.
Thank you very much for that wonderful conversation as well. It continues apace, and we thank you for the salutary effort that you're doing to pray for the country.